Welcome to the Main Street Business Insight Podcast,
featuring the stories of America's downtown and neighborhood entrepreneurs.
There's so much about being a Main Street business that is intertwined with what it means to be part of a community.
The impact that it has on creating jobs, occupying vacant storefronts, improving the quality of life, this is a big deal.
What advice would you give to other Main Street businesses?
Investing in yourself is the most important thing that you can do.
What was that experience like for you to reach out and, learn from others?
Any entrepreneur getting into business, I highly recommend find the people that you trust that'll tell you the thing you may or may not want to hear when you need to hear it, and who will stand by you in helping to solve your challenges.
And you know what's great about a special episode? Is when there's a bonus special announcement as well. We have some super exciting news to share with all of you. Main Street America and American Express are teaming up to launch a new grant program for small business owners. The Amex Shop Small Grants program will provide an initial $5 million to fund 250 grants of $20,000 each to eligible small business owners across the U.S. The application will open on this Small Business Saturday, November 29th, 2025. And get this, every time an American Express card member shops with their eligible card at a qualifying U.S. small business on November 29th, American Express will donate an additional $1 to fund additional grants. So there's an extra incentive to get out there and support local businesses on Small Business Saturday. You can find eligible small businesses in your community on the Shop Small map. American Express debit cards are not eligible. Find more information on our website at mainstreet.org/shopsmallgrant. Now back to the show. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Main Street Business Inside Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Wagner, Chief Innovation Officer at Main Street America. And as you can see, I'm flying solo today with a special edition of the show where for the last couple of years, we've presented holiday trends for small businesses, and obviously this represents the 2025 edition. And what we're going to do is break down some different data points, but also 5 recommendations to boost sales and capture more customers. So why don't we go ahead and let's just get started with it. All right. So each year, we do 2 national surveys of small businesses, what we consider the authentic Main Street business voice, okay? And this year in particular, we wanted to know a little bit more about holiday preparations, what was happening, given some of the economic headwinds that were out there, whether it's sort of tariffs or consumer confidence, or just inventory pressures, et cetera. And so this year's survey, we had 1,100 responses, and we kind of left it open-ended. Wanted to really find out what the voice was of Main Street businesses, what they were thinking about the holidays. And one of the key points that really jumped out to us was that more than 1/3 are really being more careful about their inventory purchases and are they made them way further in advance than in the past. And these are just a few sort of shout out quotes that I think are important. This is from a North Dakota retailer who said, "I'm really limiting the number of products we are getting in with less restocks. I'm anticipating a very slow winter. So we're trying to save as much money as we can to pay the rent." This is from Oregon. It's a food and beverage business. "We're scaling back on inventory and buying fewer high-end products." So thinking about their price points. And then finally, in Wisconsin, "We bought way earlier and have been holding that excess inventory, which has stretched the books a bit." So under pressure on the inventory control. "We opted not to purchase from past suppliers as they did not have a solution to address tariffs." So also very important, you're thinking about the holidays and how important that is to most retailers and having to do a shift midstream just to be able to control some of the tariff pricing out there. But also I think just demonstrates a lot of sort of savviness that we find with Main Street businesses. All right. Also, I think from the survey, we wanted to point out about a quarter of respondents mentioned increasing their promotions and marketing and trying to dress up their businesses to attract more customers. You're actually going to see that reflected in some of the other data points as we dive into this, how important that in-store experience is for so many customers. But here are some highlights of how the businesses were thinking about this. This is from an Arkansas retailer. I plan on making a bigger push online with our holiday products, also attending holiday vendor shows and offering build your own box gift sets for the holidays. Really, really going at that hyper personalization when you think about building your own box and getting creative. It's also very experiential and sort of ties a bow on the individualism of a particular product. So very cool to see there. This is coming out of Virginia. Yes, we are focused on many more events for our local community, as well as an increase in online marketing. And then finally, in California, we're going big with decorations this year, hoping that we can draw outside and bring more people inside. So key points as we think about like interior design and creating that atmosphere that's so important during the holidays. Okay, let's dive a little bit into some other data outside. We always present sort of the forecast overall. This is coming from the National Retail Federation and what the expected spend is looking like. And so what they're calculating is about $890 billion in overall spend this year. Now that is down from 2024, but is the second highest on record. So key to recognizing that while it's still up as a high note, it's actually down from 2024. I think no really big surprises there, given consumer confidence and economic headwinds. As we know, we've had 1 million job losses in 2025 as well. And so just the availability of capital spend is going to be tight, but not all dire, as would be indicated by the National Retail Federation. In terms of top spending categories for 2025, gift cards are always a biggie out there with about 50% of consumers suggesting that they'll buy gift cards. Clothing and accessories also very big at 46%. And then you kind of get down to sort of a quarter with books and other media, personal care products, and electronics. So gift cards, clothing, and accessories, always big during the holiday seasons. And again, this is from the National Retail Federation's Holiday Consumer Survey. Now we're going to move into some other data. This is by Epsilon.com, who surveyed. Again, this is from consumers. They really looked at generational spending and how that might differ depending on which generation. So this is holiday spend expectations by generation. And what you see very clearly is that millennials are out for the spend, averaging the highest at close to $900 each in terms of what they're looking to spend, and more than 20%, 34% looking to spend more than $1,000. Second highest is Gen X. But overall, it's looking about on average of close to $800, so $782 per individual generation looking to spend this year. That's up from $730 in 2024. So a little bit difference in terms of what the consumers are saying, what the expectations are coming out of the National Retail Federation. It appears it's up. That also could be reflective in just in terms of maybe perhaps not everyone getting out and shopping as before. Let's talk a little bit about the use of AI, always in the news headline about how AI impacts every portion of our lives, and shopping is a big one. And so looking at how AI tools might be used for holiday shopping. And the biggie here is almost 3/4 are looking at using AI tools simply to think about gift ideas. Going on ChatGPT, putting in the individual sort of characteristics of who you're buying for, and then seeking out ideas. And as we know, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini or what have you, they'll also tell you where to go, et cetera. And I think the sort of the sad complication in all of that is I suspect there is more that's going to be fed into the AI with bigger store brands like Amazon or what have you, and not the sort of local knowledge. So if you think about it, as you are putting in those characteristics, also think about the location, or that you're interested in buying local. This is for the consumers out there, or what town you're going to be shopping in, et cetera, so that you might be able to get some local tips about where to find those particular gift items. Second on the list is comparing prices, and then down sort of along the lines of gift ideas is product recommendations, food and meal ideas, and probably lots of recipes. And so those sort of make up close to the top 50% of how folks will be using AI this year in helping them with holiday shopping. All right, a little bit on tariff impacts. 3 out of 5 consumers are concerned about tariffs affecting prices, and nearly half feel tariffs have made it difficult to plan for holiday shopping. I think a lot of that has to do with what we've sort of phrased and what we've seen more in our own survey data reflected from small business owners is simply uncertainty. Whether or not what you see today, maybe in a price, is that what it's going to be when you get to the store, for example, or when you're ready to go out and shop. And so I think that's really, as far as pricing goes, a lot of it is just built on uncertainty. Will you be able to buy those gifts or what have you, or those experiences based on what you budgeted? And so undoubtedly tariffs will be having an impact here. And so just be on the lookout, be understanding of kind of price switches, especially from your local vendors. Okay. Shopping season timeline. This for the past decade has continued to kind of get earlier and earlier. And so as this is being recorded and being released, I think on what looks like November 12th, that's putting us where we've already had about 39%, I think, if my math is correct, will be occurring right at this point, where 39% of the shopping will be through. So about a little bit over a third, okay? Now, the biggie weeks, obviously, are that last week of November, where we've got Small Business Saturday, Shop Small, Thank You American Express, and that's really where we see the biggest boost. And then coming up in the first 2 weeks of December. And so between those two alone, you're talking about 50% of the shopping. So time to gear up. You've got a little bit of respite in the 3rd week, and then come the 4th week, Thanksgiving week, and shopping's Small Business Saturday. That's really where it comes to a head. And so need to be fully prepared by then, ready to go. Okay. There's always a discussion about, everyone's just going to be shopping online. And the reality is that in-store shopping is very, very competitive when it comes to holiday shopping, for sure, because people want the experience. And it just feels plain artificial in many ways to go online and buy someone a gift. It's certainly easy, of course, you just press a button. but there's nothing meaning there. There's no meaning, special meaning there. And I think that's really what people around the holidays especially are looking for. And you can see across the board in terms of generations, again, this is going back to the epsilon.com survey, is that in store, especially for millennials, for example, and for Gen Z, very, very important, remain key along with online. And I think that all that is to say is that this is really about bricks and clicks. And there are different ways to use through the consumer purchase, of a product. A little bit more here, and I think this is the best data point and gives me the big smile on my face, is that Main Street retail is very appealing to the next generation of shoppers, our Gen Z and millennials. And 70% of Gen Zs plan to shop for gifts at local or independent retailers. Let me tell you that again. 70% of Gen Z plans to shop for gifts at local or independent retailers. And I think that's really, really huge. Some things that they're really interested, especially Gen Z and millennials, 1 in 5 prefers to shop at secondhand stores or home furnishing stores for holiday gifts. That's really something that of interest to them. That's the highest percentage across generation within those two particular categories. But the net takeaway is in-store, shopping small, supporting local, buying local, independent, very key for these generations. And I think sets our downtowns and our neighborhood commercial districts very well into the future. 54% more of consumers are looking in-store for gift inspiration or holiday shopping. So online remains a need, as I discussed before, especially on the marketing end. But if you have limited resources, make sure, and this goes back to some of the commentary in our survey, where people were really talking about beefing up sort of the look, the appeal of the store, whether it's the storefront, the interior design, what we call sensory marketing, where we think about the smells, the lighting, the color, the ambiance. That's really important, especially around the holidays, whether it's the cinnamon apple in the air or what have you, the pines, the twinkling lights. All of that goes into sort of inspiration for shopping and really creates the experience that so many consumers are looking for. And once again, the nostalgia around that is so critical. And so whether it's a main street in a downtown or a neighborhood, we're very fortunate that we have that kind of opportunity to really showcase. The buildings come into play, the old storefronts, the interior sensory, etc. Okay, let's move on to social media use for holiday shopping and inspiration. So where are folks going, especially with different generations, given that boomers and where they're going for information can be quite different from Gen Z, for example. And you can see this playing out, that boomer generations really turn to Facebook as well as, or are turning, I should say, as a percentage, okay, of where they go is much larger than the others. Okay, they're not the highest users of social media. Okay, just based on what you're seeing in this graphic, if you're watching this on YouTube. But it is the biggest social media outlet for boomers. Okay, for millennials, Facebook is also pretty big, as is Instagram and YouTube. Okay, so those three are kind of neck and neck. For Gen X, Facebook is well, with Pinterest and YouTube also being up there, the top three. And then finally, Gen Z, really TikTok driven. So this is where, in Instagram, this is where you see the biggest shift when it comes to social media. Millennials, Gen X, boomers, fairly consistent, similar for the most part, especially millennials and Gen Z, but Gen X, but Gen Z is in just a totally different world when it comes to social media use. So keep that in mind in terms of knowing who your customer is and where's the social media where it's going to be best apt to reach them for shopping ideas and giving them inspiration to come to your store. All right. So I'm going to wrap up now, moving from sort of the data, how we're looking at the data, and then some recommendations that you might want to consider as part of your holiday preparation, especially last minute preparation. So if you have broad consumer markets, pay particularly attention to Gen Z and millennials, okay? They're probably the most apt to shop in store, okay? So as you're thinking about like your return on investment and you only have so many chips to play, Gen Z and millennials is probably where you're going to get the most value. They also tend to support local and independent retailers more and have the highest projected holiday spending. The key is to reach them is going to take different tactics. Millennials is going to be much more consistent with Gen X, and Gen Z, as I just showed in the social media, you're probably going to have to reach them through more sort of video, TikTok, Instagram. And Instagram might be that overlay between the two, especially for small businesses, Main Street businesses that I know are a little bit more used to dealing with Instagram instead of TikTok. And then continue to market from a perspective of you're supporting local, you're an independent business, and if you're secondhand, vintage, if you have sort of environmental costs, these are all things that would appeal to the Gen Z and millennial markets. So that's recommendation number one. And a lot of my recommendations are around the time that we're at and only having a short time to sort of ramp up, and two, that money and capacity is not unlimited. So where are we best going to put sort of our chips to play into the holiday shopping season? Number two, put limited resources to creating a wonderful in-store experience. Now's not the time to fly out and try to create your own website if you don't have one, or your own e-commerce shopping cart or what have you. Focus on the in-store experience. Again, what's going to give you the highest return on investment is making that storefront look glorious, creating that experience in store. Consumers, while using technology for discovery, at least have your Google profile or a standalone Facebook web page or what have you, and their purchasing experiences will be amplified with deal closure in the store. Okay. So again, as we talked about before, the clicks, the online creates a research opportunity, a chance to discover your business, but to close the deal, you want them in the store. That's where the design, the sense, the atmosphere, the laughing with family and friends as they stroll through your store, or have that cup of coffee or hot chocolate or whatever it is, that's what's going to nail the deal or seal the deal. Okay. All right. Number three, economic headwinds, tariffs, consumer confidence, what have you. The key to recognize, we gave you sort of an overview in general, 3 in 5 consumers concerned, et cetera. But what's happening is we sort of have a bifurcated market of consumers where, the stock market has been up for some, and for some that aren't invested in the market or whatever, the economy could look quite different, or in areas where we've had like job layoffs, et cetera. And so it's not clear, consistent across consumers. And so you have to think about individual consumers very differently. And so again, going back, making sure you have an understanding of who your customer is and trying to personalize products and messages to them. That's going to be very, very key this year, sort of the hyper personalization. The more you know and understand about your customers, the more successful you're going to be in 2025 during the holidays. Number 4, don't worry about having inventory overload and tons of selection. 3/4 of consumers say they're overwhelmed by too many options. And I think that's in some ways, the pulling back, as we saw in the survey data, the pulling back on inventory and not carrying as much actually may benefit many small businesses. Okay, sort of clear up the clutter. There was an article about Target, for instance, and how people weren't shopping at Target because they thought the aisles were too messy, too much inventory, etc. And so I think what people are getting at is they're having information overload, whether it's online or going into high volume, stores. There's just too much. It's like a Jersey diner menu. Okay, and so make sure that as people are feeling overwhelmed, maybe limit the options, curate it a little bit more. 76% of consumers are worrying about making the right decision when buying gifts. This is coming from Accenture. So limit the options, okay? Go with your winners. Go with what you think is really going to drive sales. Don't worry about inventory overload. And the last recommendation that we have is create value shopping opportunities. Like loss leaders, as we think about loss leaders from a retail perspective, this year the prime motivation will be around deal seeking. Okay, think about the economy, thinking about value, thinking about these consumers like Gen Z and millennials really seeking out value. 7 in 10 shoppers across all income groups are engaging in value-seeking behaviors. So if they only got fewer chips to play, they're going to look at what gives them the biggest bang for the buck. I mean, it really just drives that home. And this is from Deloitte, their 2025 holiday retail survey. So kind of intermixing with hyper-personalization and, not inventory overload, and going with what you think are the best product types for your consumers and knowing your consumer. So that's going to do it for the 2025 holiday edition of the Main Street Business Inside podcast. And hope you enjoyed some of the data. Hope this was helpful. Please send any questions or comments my way. You can see my email address below if you're watching on YouTube. For the listeners out there, it's mwagner@mainstreet.org. Feel free to always reach out and also subscribe. And remember that, our local businesses are so important to our local and national economies and really, give identity to the places we all call home. So thank you so much for joining the show and for all of your support.